Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazaudio. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Topping L70 desktop amplifier. And of course, I just recently released the reviews of the E70 and E70 Velvet companion DACs. And while you can, of course, pair the L70 with other DACs, the E70 and E70 Velvet are optimized, more or less, to be paired with the L70. But as you can see, I have everything that comes in the box here out on the table. It comes with the DAC itself. It also comes with a remote, power cable, and a 6.35 to 3.5 millimeter headphone adapter. As for inputs, outputs, buttons, and knobs, in the front we have a power button that also doubles as an input selector. Then we have a volume and menu display, a balanced XLR and 4.4 output, a single-ended 1/4 inch output, and a volume control that also, when pressed, gives you additional menu functions. On the back, we have a pair of balanced XLR inputs that are also TRS inputs. Then just on the other side of that, we have a pair of RCA inputs, then we have a pair of RCA outputs, and a pair of XLR outputs. There is also a 12-volt trigger, a ground lift switch, a Type-C input for upgrading the firmware, a power plug input, and then finally the main power switch. As for the price, design, and specifications, the L70 comes in at $349 and is the most expensive desktop amplifier in the L series lineup. So they also have the L30 and the L50, which I reviewed a while back if you're looking for something a little more budget friendly. And they have the higher end options in the A series, of course. The design is simple but nice. The display is nice and bright and easy to read. However, the menu itself is not the most intuitive. It did take me a bit to get used to it as far as navigating through it. That being said, it wasn't so bad once I got used to it. And of course, you can navigate the menu using the included remote or by using the power button or the volume control. Power button also allows you to switch between the RCA and XLR inputs, and the volume control has some pretty cool stuff going on as well, because this is not just your average volume control. The L70 utilizes R2R volume control, which basically gives you excellent channel balance and very precise control as well. And it also has volume memory, so it remembers the volume levels of the different inputs. And as far as features and specifications, this is where things kind of start to get interesting. But for time's sake, I'm only going to cover the ones I feel are the most pertinent. So going a little deeper into the features and specifications, as far as internal components, the L70 uses the same NFCA module that was used in the A90, so it has fully balanced architecture. Now, as for power output, this is where things really start to get interesting, because this thing gives you an impressive 7,500 milliwatts at 32 ohms and 600 milliwatts at 600 ohms out of the balanced output. So basically what that means is it can probably drive most of the headphones out there out of the balanced output. Now, the single-ended output does cut that in half, but it's still very good. And it gives you 2,300 milliwatts at 32 ohms and 290 milliwatts at 300 ohms. Now, on top of all of that, you get extremely low distortion and noise and a very high dynamic range of 146 dBs, which is pretty incredible. And with that, let's move on to the sound. Now, before we move on, I just feel like I should remind you that every device in your chain is very important and is going to affect your sound. But ultimately, your listening experience will be determined by the performance level of your headphones or IEMs, because again, those are the last link in that chain and the last thing that the sound passes through before it reaches your eardrums. So everything, all those parts are all working together to deliver that sound to you. But the IEMs, the performance level of your IEMs and headphones ultimately are what determine how good that listening experience is going to be for you. That being said, now as for the overall sound of the L70, it's basically neutral across the whole frequency spectrum and is about as linear as any other amplifier that I've heard. So there are no dips or peaks at all. Now, as for bass reproduction, it has excellent slam, impact, and dynamics. So kick drums and those low bass notes have incredible physicality and density. And as for mid-bass texture and detail, it's also excellent. So I never felt like there was anything missing or lacking. So the bass quality of the L70 is simply excellent. And as you move into the lower mids, that same level of detail is present, and the L70 does an excellent job of allowing all of the notes to resolve fully. And again, that mid-range detail is really good. So all of the instruments and vocal textures are rendered naturally, accurately, and portrayed just beautifully. As for the treble, some of the instruments that reach up into the treble sound very detailed and again have excellent resolve and just sound complete. And as far as cymbals and hi-hats, they also sound very, very natural and detailed. As for technicalities, again, detail retrieval is simply excellent throughout the entire frequency spectrum. The sound stage is realistic and accurate. If it's recorded wide and your IEMs or headphones can reproduce that accurately, then it will deliver that. Instrument separation and imaging, layering is also very accurate, so instruments have good density and are nicely anchored within their position in the sound field. And of course, as usual, I test the background noise with my 2020 Andromedas and Zen Pros, and the background is completely silent, so there is no background noise at all. So normally, right about now is when I summarize my experience with whatever device I happen to be reviewing. But honestly, I don't even know if it's necessary because I think it's pretty obvious that my experience was very good. And I can't really find anything that I can fault with the L70. It's simply an excellent amplifier. But what's crazy is that it's only $350. And I have to ask myself, why would Topping do that? And I mean, I'm glad they did, because while I know $350 isn't necessarily cheap, considering the level of the L70's performance, it's a ridiculous value. So obviously, I recommend it. Not only do I recommend it, like the E70 Velvet, I feel like the L70 deserves my top recommendation. And again, like I stated in my review of the E70 Velvet, when they're paired together, meaning the E70 Velvet and the L70, this might be the stack to beat at its price, and maybe even the stack to beat under $1,000. So the L70 is simply an excellent amplifier, and again, it gets my highest recommendation. So that concludes my review of the Topping L70. If you are new to the Giz Audio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further with your support, we also now have a Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.